The film starts with a homeless man sleeping on the street. His name is Marvel. A man shows up and starts yelling at him, but we can't see him because he's invisible. The man tells Marvel he wants him to work for him, and in return he'll give him anything he asks for. Then he grabs him by the neck and threatens to kill him if he betrays him or doesn't follow his orders. We then move to the house of a man named Griffin. We see him preparing his research. He gets up to make the serum, but the landlord knocks on the door because he wants the overdue rent. Griffin rushes to finish the serum, fills a syringe, and injects himself. He screams in intense pain. After that, we see his body starting to disappear. The more his body fades, the worse the pain gets, until he finally succeeds in becoming completely invisible. At that moment, the landlord breaks down the door and comes in, but Griffin smashes a lamp and sets the entire house on fire. In England, in 1897, we move to a woman named Adeline. She lives in a mansion and is reading a newspaper article about the Invisible Man, who has become the talk of the towns. She looks out the window and sees Marvel approaching. He looks terrified and is carrying a bag full of books and money. He goes into town and enters a restaurant, looking like he's running from someone. He sits down, orders food, and eats very greedily while reading the books. A man comes and sits with him, talking about the books he's reading. Suddenly, the door bursts open. Marvel panics and looks around. Out of nowhere, an invisible person attacks him. They start fighting until Marvel throws hot soup in his face, badly burning him. Marvel then punches a police officer and manages to escape. When people see the Invisible Man, they start shooting at him, but none of the bullets hit him. We then return to Adeline, who is sad as she looks at a picture of her late husband. She walks around the mansion and notices blood on the stairs. She goes back to the office, grabs a gun, and carefully walks up the stairs holding it. The blood trails all the way up to a door, and she sees that the handle is covered in blood. She opens the door and finds the bed soaked in blood. She hears someone talking to her, but no one is visible. The voice seems to know her well. She's terrified. Suddenly, she feels someone grab her and throw her onto the bed. He tells her he's her colleague Griffin and begs her to help him because he's injured. Adeline calms down a little, but she still doesn't understand how this happened. Griffin explains that the experiments he was working on in college finally succeeded, and he became invisible. She helps him treat his arm, tearing a piece of cloth and wrapping it around his hand. Griffin didn't know her husband had died, and when he finds out, he feels deeply sorry and apologizes for showing up after so many years without notice. She leaves him in the room and goes to sleep. The next day, she notices a bloodstain and tries to hide it. Then Inspector Eddie arrives and tells her they're looking for a man who caused trouble at the restaurant the night before. People were saying he was invisible. Adeline tries to get more information from him and feels relieved when she learns that no one was killed. She goes upstairs but doesn't find Griffin. She looks for him, and later that night she finds him sitting in the room. He tells her he was out all day and gives her money to help herself, because the bank only has 1 week left before it forecloses on the mansion. Adeline is worried about where the money came from, but she doesn't focus on it too much, because without that money she would be out on the street. The next day, she goes to the bank and meets Wixted there. It's obvious she can't stand him. He mocks the policies she wants to put in place, and tells her that as long as he's alive, she'll never be able to carry out any of them. She goes inside the bank and pays the money, but there's still an extra amount due. She claims that a thief robbed the bank, gets nervous, and leaves. When she gets back home, she takes Griffin and shows him her late husband's laboratory. Griffin is trying to find a way to become visible again, but he can't, because Marvel stole his research. Without it, he'd have to test more than 400,000 formulas, which would take the rest of his life. Adeline is excited and wants to know how he did it. He tells her he spent all his money on his research because he was searching for a way to be truly free. His experiments were starting to succeed, but his landlord lost patience, so he had no choice but to inject himself with the serum. Afterward, he felt extreme cold because he couldn't wear any clothes. He couldn't stand it, so he went into a shop, took some clothes, and put them on. He realized that invisibility gave him wealth and power, but he wouldn't be able to truly enjoy them. Inspector Eddie comes to talk to Adeline and notices she's nervous. He asks how she managed to delay the bank's foreclosure on the mansion. She tells him her brother in America sent her money because he works on the railroads. The inspector notices her husband's coat, picks it up, sees that it's dirty, and a coin falls out of it. He questions how the bank could be robbed and, at the exact same time, she was able to pay off a large portion of her debt, especially since the bank was robbed of twice the amount she paid. He wants to know where the rest of the money went, and clearly suspects she knows something. He shows her letters and says she's been sending mail around town asking about a man named Marvel. She doesn't understand and asks how he got the letters. He tells her he has friends everywhere in the city. Adeline notices Griffin holding an iron bar, ready to strike the inspector. She gets scared, jumps up, and asks the inspector to leave. Before he goes, he tells her he came specifically so she could be honest with him, because he feels she's hiding something. After he leaves, she goes inside and yells at Griffin, asking how he could write letters in her name, and even think about killing Inspector Eddie, but he doesn't respond. Later, while she's standing alone, Margaret comes in and hands her a letter that arrived in the mail. It's from her friend, Reverend Oliver. He tells her he knows where Marvel is, but unfortunately he can't inform her of the location because the police are currently watching Marvel for reasons he doesn't know. He also says he'll inform the police that her letter has arrived. Adeline takes a carriage and goes to see him, begging to meet the man. Oliver tells her where Marvel is but advises her to stay away from him. She goes to talk to Marvel and learns that Griffin wants to control the entire country, but Marvel claims he ruined all of Griffin's plans and seems very proud of it. She sees the notebooks in his hand and asks if there's any way she can take them from him. He yells at her and threatens to tell everyone that she's helping the Invisible Man, then walks away. Oliver steps in and looks at her, and she runs after Marvel, but he's already gone. She returns home, makes sure Griffin isn't in the room, and goes to sleep. We then see that Griffin was watching her. The next day, she asks Griffin where he had disappeared to. He tells her he followed Inspector Eddie to find out what he knows and discovered that Eddie doesn't believe any stories about an invisible man. That reassures her. Then he moves a chess piece she had told him not to touch because it was the last game she played with her husband before he died, but this time, she doesn't object. Griffin tries to convince her to help him, saying that together they can achieve everything they want. She then notices a newspaper headline saying that Wicksteed has been found dead. Griffin continues, saying he can remove every obstacle in her path, but first he needs to get his notebooks back, and she has to help him do it. She goes to meet Marvel but doesn't find him. Instead, she meets a man who says he knows where Marvel is and asks what he'll get in return. She gives him money, and he agrees to take her there. They reach a tunnel, and he tells her to continue alone before leaving. She walks deeper inside until she finds Marvel, but it turns out he set a trap for her, and several men are there with him. She tells him she doesn't want the money, just the notebooks. Marvel shouts that if Griffin wants them, he should come get them himself instead of hiding behind her. She insists she came alone and is willing to pay for the notebooks. Marvel laughs, and one of his men approaches Adeline, attempting to harass her. Before he can do anything, Griffin arrives, kills the first man, and attacks the rest, taking down anyone who stands in his way. He tells Adeline to run. He defeats them all but then leans against the wall, and we realize he's been wounded. Inspector Eddie arrives and arrests Marvel. Marvel tells him that the Invisible Man killed the men and that he can ask his friend about it. Later, the inspector goes to Adeline's house. She has the notebooks with her. He asks who killed the two men in the tunnel, and she tries to deny knowing anything. He pulls out her gun, which he found beside the bodies in the tunnel. She gets scared and explains that she was trying to get the notebooks back because Marvel stole them, and that someone came and saved her. The inspector laughs sarcastically and asks what the man who saved her looked like. She says she doesn't know. This frustrates him, and he tells her she needs to tell the truth before he has to arrest her. She says the notebooks belong to her husband. He opens them and sees they're written in some kind of code. He says he has a friend who can solve puzzles and mentions that a 7-letter word is the key to cracking it. He finds it strange that both she and Marvel claim the notebooks, even though either of them knows what's inside. Adeline insists they belong to her husband, who was a scientist and dreamed of becoming a member of the Royal Society. Eddie is surprised that her husband experimented on humans and thinks the notebooks are madness, but he leans toward believing her, since she risked her life for them. In the end, he leaves the notebooks with her and walks away. The next day, Margaret walks into the room and notices something strange. She goes down to the lab, where Griffin is choking Adeline. Adeline later goes to see the mayor, feeling happy because there's news that the city council is going to vote on her proposal. The mayor tells her that Councilman Wicksteed died suddenly, so the committee cancelled his proposals, but that doesn't mean hers has been approved. She asks who's opposing her so she can explain her reasons, and he tells her it's Councilman Hammond. As she leaves, she finds Griffin standing beside her. She asks him to show himself since he was invisible and demands to know how long he's been following her. He says he's doing it to help her and explains that the mayor was writing a letter to Hammond encouraging him to vote against her proposal. Their goal now is to stop that from happening. He asks her to help him retrieve the other 2 books, and in return he'll make sure she gets the council's approval. He promises he won't hurt anyone. She goes to the police station and tells Inspector Eddie she wants to see Marvel because he stole 3 books, not just one, and they belong to her husband. They head down to the cells, and Eddie tells her he'll do the questioning and she should stay quiet. He asks Marvel about the 2 books, but Marvel insists they're his. Eddie tells him his education level doesn't qualify him to own books like those and that they belong to her husband. Marvel accuses Eddie of killing the men and bringing in the Invisible Man, and claims Adeline is helping him. Eddie asks, "If you're so scared of the Invisible Man, why not just hand over the books and be done with it?" Marvel says that if the Invisible Man gets the books, it won't be the end, it'll just be the beginning. Eddie gets fed up and walks out. Marvel panics and begs him not to leave him alone with the Invisible Man, but Eddie mocks him and leaves anyway. Back at the house, Adeline is asleep when Griffin comes in and tells her he found out where the 2 books are, thanks to her. He reassures her that Marvel is fine and unharmed, and once again tries to convince her to join him in what he's planning. The next morning, she looks for Margaret. Ivy tells her Margaret left a note in the kitchen saying she went to her sister's because she wasn't feeling well. Adeline takes the note and goes down to Griffin, finding him overjoyed because his notebooks are back. He tells her he's now working on a cure for invisibility that will give him even more power. He'll be able to turn invisible and visible whenever he wants. He says she'll be by his side. She tries to tell him she doesn't want to be invisible, but he keeps talking, saying he'll start today by making sure she wins the vote. Then he leaves. She rushes after him and meets with the mayor, trying to convince him to delay the vote, but he says that's impossible, it's happening that afternoon. She suddenly remembers Wicksteed's death, and at that moment Griffin pushes the mayor in front of a moving carriage, killing him. She goes to the police station, where Eddie tells her that 2 men who supported her proposal have been killed, and he doesn't believe that's a coincidence. He starts connecting the dots between all the bodies he's seen and lists their names. When she hears Marvel's name, she goes down to see his body and breaks down. She confesses to Eddie that Griffin did everything, that he's the Invisible Man. She says she never imagined he was capable of all this, she was only thinking about scientific progress. She tells Eddie Griffin has become insane and dangerous. Eddie says they can stop him, but the most important thing now is that she chooses whose side she's on. She goes back home, takes the books, and hides them. When she picks up Margaret's letter, she realizes the handwriting matches Griffin's. She's terrified and doesn't know what to do. She goes down to the lab and opens a hidden door, finding Margaret tied up while Griffin experiments on her with the formula. Adeline rushes to her, crying, but Margaret suddenly dies. Adeline tries to run, but she hears Ivy singing upstairs. She decides to go to her. In the bathroom, she grabs a bedsheet and throws it toward where Griffin is to reveal him. Ivy panics and runs. Adeline runs after her, opens the door, and Ivy escapes outside, where Eddie and the police are waiting. He signals to her. Adeline goes back inside to face Griffin. He tells her the last obstacle in her way has been removed and she'll win the vote. He coldly says Margaret was just a lab rat, and tries to convince Adeline that he's doing all this so they can gain power. He hears noise on the stairs. Adeline tries to lie, but he insists on checking. As soon as he opens the door, she calls out to Inspector Eddie to arrest him. Griffin hits her, takes off his jacket, turns invisible, and manipulates one of the officers into killing his partner. Then he escapes. Eddie chases him. Griffin grabs an axe and kills another officer right in front of Adeline. Terrified, she slams the door shut and looks out the window, trying to warn Eddie. Griffin tells Eddie he'll help him get into the house and retrieve his books, but Eddie refuses to put her in danger. Griffin attacks him, shatters the glass door, and breaks in. Adeline grabs a gun and 3 books, standing near the fire. Griffin enters the room. She warns him she'll shoot if he comes any closer and that she'll burn his notebooks if he doesn't leave. He threatens to kill her if she destroys his research. She doesn't hesitate. She throws the books into the fire. Furious, Griffin sets the entire library ablaze and locks the door, telling her she could have been a queen and had everything. But Adeline had hidden the real books in a bag. She grabs it, jumps, falls, then gets back up and runs. Griffin follows her, saying they could have achieved the impossible together, that everything could have been theirs. He says he would have built an army of invisible men and taken over the world. He lunges at her, but she shoots him. He falls to the ground, and his body slowly becomes visible again. He tells her he has always loved her and always will, because she is his password, his key. Then he dies. At that moment, Adeline realizes her name was the key to the code. She goes to help Eddie, who tells her Griffin did all of this for her. Eddie also confesses that he loves her, then walks away. She stands there shocked. Then she retrieves the bag with the real books, smiling and laughing with relief. And that's the end of the film. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.